Hello, I'm Carly Fiorina. I'm so happy to be on the podcast today. We're talking about leadership and problem solving and how you can find your way.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series. I'm your host, Dov Baron, the founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing in your business that changes everything. Let me ask you, are you committed to up-leveling your leadership? Well, how are you going to find your way and step into your full potential? Well, we'll find out. Remember, you can chat about this episode or any past episodes by going to either our LinkedIn or our Facebook pages. Just look for Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. As always, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you tune into podcasts. And we always need your help in staying relevant. So please go over there and rate, review, and subscribe to the show. You can also catch us on traditional radio stations across the United States, all the way from Philadelphia to Florida, and even to Quantico area of Washington, D.C. You can also look for us on Roku TV, where there's over 100,000 subscribers. And if you are a regular listener, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners, with a potential reach of 2.5 to 4 million listeners for every single show. We're honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. And you can also catch us on Spotify, Alexa, or any of those home podcast mechanisms by simply play Dov Baron podcast. Again, thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. As a leader, whether you're a CEO, someone in the C-suite, a sales leader, entrepreneur, or a leader in any capacity, you know that there seems to be a sort of a very prescribed way to the top of success mountain. But how do you know that you're climbing the right mountain? How do you find your way and unleash your highest potential? Well, let's find out together, because my guest on this episode is Carly Fiorina. She is the founder and chairman of Carly Fiorina Enterprises and of Unlocking Potential, a nonprofit organization. In 2016, she was the first declared female candidate to seek the Republican Party nomination for presidential candidate, the first woman to head a Fortune 500 company, and the author of several books, including New York Times bestsellers. And her latest book is Find Your Way. Please, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for a lady of first, Miss Carly Fiorina! Welcome, Carly.
Thank you so much, Dov. That's quite a welcome. I feel special. Thank you.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you do. And we're happy to have you here. Thank you so much. I want to start the show with something that I'd like to start the show, which is, you're a very successful woman in all kinds of ways, and we're going to get into all the details of that in a moment. But it's easy for us to say, well, we hold this icon as the person who influenced us. But one of my questions is, who's somebody who influenced you that we likely wouldn't know or wouldn't suspect, somebody who's had a major impact on the way that you look at the world?
Well, I could tell you so many stories. I could start by saying, honestly, my mother and father had a huge impact on me. But maybe I'll tell you the story of a woman I know you've never heard of in the slums of New Delhi, India, who had the courage to reject the consensus of her family and her culture, who took a microloan, became an entrepreneur, and now employs her entire family as well as others in her village. I think about that woman all the time because for me, she exemplifies what leadership is actually all about, which is changing the order of things for the better. And I talk about her a lot when I speak to people about leadership, but I guarantee you, she's not famous and no one's ever heard of her, but she is a leader, which proves that leadership isn't about your title or your position. It's about the impact you have.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. It's always about the impact. And I think it's often about the impact you have in the face of how many people tell you you can't do it. I mean,
Yes.
said, she resisted the order. She went against it. She found her own way to do what it was. That's very cool. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. Now, I believe that this is your third book.
Yes.
You had a memoir that was Tough Choices, and you also did a leadership book called Raising the Challenge. Why find your way? Why is that? Why this one at this time?
Well, because we have a lot of problems in businesses, in communities, in families. We have a lot of people who feel as though either it's not their job to try and tackle the problem, or they feel helpless or powerless or maybe hopeless to do anything about the problem. And because there are a lot of people who assume that if someone is called a leader or has a big office or a big title, that they are a leader. And so people get disillusioned when leaders don't lead. They feel helpless and powerless and hopeless. They don't know how to tackle the problem that's actually theirs to solve. And so this book was written for all those people out there who are problem solvers and leaders, but don't yet know it.
Right. And I really want to get into that because I know that that's a big focus of this book, about being a problem solver and contributing and collaborating with others. One of the things I want to step into here is, let's look back a little bit, because you ran Hewlett-Packard, you ran for Senate in California in 2010, and in the presidential run-up in 2016, you were pretty much an unknown, and many people may have thought that you didn't have that background, but you did run for Senate. You actually were an advisor to John McCain's run as well. So talk to us about your stepping into politics a little bit first. Let's sort of go back a bit, because that doesn't seem to be part of the the image either.
Well, I like challenge and I run to problems. I always have. When I figured out that I like challenge and I run to problems, that's when I really began to achieve impact. And so what I saw were a whole bunch of problems. Now, George Washington said in 1789, the trouble with political parties and politics is it will come to be all about winning. And it won't be about problem solving. And I think that's true. I think we have too many professional politicians. I know something about the reform of large institutions, which I think we sorely need. And so what I saw was a set of problems that I thought I had some capability and a different approach to solving. And so why not?
Why not? Yeah. But again, at the same time, we're of a generation that certainly has been very biased towards men and much less towards women. We've all heard about the glass ceiling, but we've also heard about the glass cliff. Do you think it's fair to say that you were hired to stir the pot at Hewlett-Packard and that's what you did? And then you got grief for it?
Well, look, when you're different, it's different. That's just a fact. When you're different, it's different. So if you look different or you act differently than most of the people around you, it will be different for you. And it has been different for me all my life because, as you point out, I was introduced to corporate America when there weren't a lot of people that looked like me. And I got involved in politics when there weren't a lot of people on the debate stage who looked like me. And so what I mean when I say it's different when you're different is the expectations are different, the scrutiny is different, The criticism is different. The treatment is different. It's true. On the other hand, you can let that get in your way, or you can just be realistic about the fact that you will encounter different things than others do and plow ahead anyway. I was hired at Hewlett-Packard to transform a company that had lost its way. I ended up getting fired by a dysfunctional board at the end of 6 years. I don't have a single regret about my time there. And I think my track record has stood the test of time. But there's also no question that I was treated differently all throughout my career because I look different. And there's no question I was treated differently as a presidential candidate. That's the way it is. And in some cases, there are advantages to being different, but it's a hard road. There's no question. And all your listeners who are different know what I'm talking about.
Oh, sure. And certainly I fit into that category in my own way. I think anybody who's a real leader fits into that category. And I think that part of the challenge is that we are looking to make things the same, and obviously they're not. And the unification idea is different than the normalization. And I think that, rather than saying, well, you're unique and I'm unique, and what do I bring and what do you bring, versus, well, we all need to be equal. But I think that, let's look at it from a point of women in leadership. But I really want to hear about your point of view in that, because, I'm very supportive of women leadership. I actually think we need a lot more women leaders, and whether that's on the right or the left, it doesn't matter. In business, in politics, in every form, we need more women leaders, because I think we need more empathy, we need more compassion, we need more community. What is your thoughts on women in leadership, and the fact that, as I said, there seems to be a glass ceiling and often a glass cliff, in that woman is promoted to the position where the company's about to go over the cliff. So, it was her fault. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? What your thoughts are on that?
Well, that's a wide range of topics, but let me start by just quoting you some facts.
Okay.
So in corporate America today, corporations in this country are spending $8 billion a year on diversity training.
Mm-hmm.
60% of boardrooms in America have no women. The number of corporate officers in the boardroom who are women sits at about 16% overall, less for people of color, and those numbers have not moved in over 25 years. There are more men named James who are CEOs than there are women who are CEOs.
Wow.
I'll start with, wow.
One name, James.
Wow.
James outnumbers all the women.
Yes.
I mean, I just wanted people to stop and just, because that's a great way to put it, because that really puts it in perspective.
Yeah.
Just picking a name, James, there's more Jameses at the top of the line than there are women.
Yeah. And it's worse for people of color. Okay, so now the question is why? Because it's not that we're not aware of this as a problem. We are.
No.
It's not that people aren't spending money to solve the problem. They are. And yet it's not changing. And I think the reason it's not changing is twofold. Number one, I think people think of diversity still as a nice to do, the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But while it's a good thing to do and the right thing to do, what they're not saying is it is a business imperative that I have a diverse team. In fact, the data supports that it is a business imperative. Diverse teams yield better outcomes. Diverse boards yield better returns over time. And yet, people don't yet accept it as in their own self-interest to work with others different than them, which brings us to the second problem. And the second problem is it's just human nature, but we are all more comfortable dealing with people like us.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to collaborate with people who are like us, who think like us, who look like us, who finish our sentences for us. It's hard to collaborate with people who are different. And so people choose not to unless they know it's in their vital self-interest to do so. It's one of the reasons why, I built diverse teams all of my career. I still do it to this day because I know they yield better results. But it's one of the reasons why I stress collaboration. What does it take to collaborate effectively? so much in all of the work I do with both for-profit and nonprofit organizations. It's why I talk so much about collaboration in my book, Find Your Way. Until and unless people learn to collaborate with someone who is different than them in the service of solving a problem, they're not going to achieve as much impact as they want, number one. But number two, we're never going to make progress on giving everyone, regardless of their appearance, the opportunity to fulfill their potential.
So let's hone in on that a little bit. So this term, which I think is one of those ones that's thrown around, like diversity, it's thrown around. I actually don't know. I mean, I've been doing this. I've been a leadership guy for 35 years. I've had my show for 11 years. And I hear these words that are, they're the phrase of the week or the phrase of the year even. And one of them is diversity. But another one that's really come up, I wrote about it in my last book, which is collaboration. Mm. And I don't think that people really understand what that means. What does collaboration mean to you? What is the message about collaboration you want our viewers to really get?
People cannot fulfill their own potential for leadership without others. There is nothing worth doing that an individual can achieve on their own, period. Mm-hmm. So if you want to be a leader, if you want to have an impact, if you want to achieve, if you want to make a difference, you absolutely have to learn how to do work with others. Now, by the way, there's so many people who are high achievers who are listening to this and who say, gosh, sometimes it's a pain in the neck to work with other people. And you know what? It's just easier if I do it myself. And I know what to do. I don't need to collaborate with others. And they're going to miss something big. They're going to make a mistake. They're not going to achieve their impact. So there are how-tos of collaboration, things that you need to do to learn how to become a good collaborator. But it starts by understanding that I cannot achieve my own potential. I cannot achieve my own goals. I cannot be a real leader unless I'm willing to collaborate with others, full stop.
But there's this mentality, again, I think it's generational, but that's the lone wolf mentality.
Yeah.
Crazy idea.
The hero mentality. I'm a hero.
Exactly. It's in psychology, which is my background. It is the hero winner psychology, and the hero winner is I'm the hero, and I have to win at all costs. That's what happened in the last election.
Or I alone can fix it.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same version of the same thing. It's just and so this is fascinating for me, Kelly, because. You're talking about this, understanding about collaboration, and one of the things we're seeing right now is tribal politics. We're all going to rally around the Republican Party, therefore Donald Trump, even if we disagree with him. We're all going to rally around, there is no Democratic leader right now, but of the Democratic Party. But, there's rallying around a party rather than collaborating with or even within your own party, it seems to be like, oh, well, I'll just tug the forelock and, oh, yeah, you're the boss. To me, and I know I've seen this from my own research, is that we have not changed leadership, really. We like to talk about it, but leadership has not really changed since Roman times. It's the same stupid system that actually brought down the Romans, and we need I agree with you fully, we need collaboration. But how do we get people away from this tribal mentality? Because they are tearing at people who are different.
Well, all the way back to George Washington, the trouble with politics is it will come to be only about winning.
Right.
The first thing that a real leader, not someone with position or title, right. The first thing a real leader needs to understand, it's actually not about you. Mm-hmm. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's not about you being a hero. It's not about you getting the next promotion, although you may achieve those things. Sure. What it's about is changing the order of things for the better. A leader changes the order of things for the better. they make an impact. And so one of the hardest things about leadership, and one of the most important elements to actually redefine leadership, is to take the I out of it. I don't mean to be falsely modest. I don't mean to underestimate the impact that each of us as individuals can make, and a leader has catalytic impact. But I do mean to say that you measure the success of a leader by the impact they have, the problems they solve, the opportunities they achieve. And as soon as you decide, you know what, it's actually not about me, success is not getting the next promotion, although that might be a great thing. Success is making things better. And you can't make things better and you can't solve a problem if you're acting like a hero all by yourself. You may have people pledge their loyalty to you. You may get a big promotion. You may get a super office, but you're not leading.
No.
You're doing something else. And if I could just say, Dov, I think people also confuse management and leadership.
Absolutely.
And management, you know, it's not that managers are bad people, but managers do the best they can within the system, within existing constraints and conditions. We have a lot of managers who take on leader titles.
Yes.
But they're not leading, they're managing. They're doing the best they can within existing constraints and conditions. And I think political parties are filled with managers who are doing the best they can within existing constraints and conditions. And the goal is to win, which is very different than a goal of changing the order of things for the better and actually solving a problem.
Well, it's not just winning. I mean, it's self-preservation, right?
Well, that too, but in politics, winning is self-preservation.
Exactly, but it's self-preservation. I mean, I'm very political. I've studied a lot of politics, and I'm fascinated by, you know, I've watched people who are genuinely care about their constituents, and then they get into Congress.
The system.
And they're in that system, and they go, "Oh my God, I got to raise money today, but I want to serve my people. I want to go after this bill." No, you got to raise money today because it's it's a machine, and I think that so many people forget that, and that's why I think that politics has to actually come back to the individual and say, what am I going to do? Which I know is a big part of the work that you're doing with your foundations, which is bringing things back. But I still want to come after this question, which is, how do we get people to collaborate who are in the system? That's the problem that I see, is they're in that system, they're in the self-preservation. And yes, I agree with you. You're never going to really fulfill your potential unless you collaborate. But at the same time, many of them, I'd love to know your input on how do we leverage them to say, okay, step out, do something different.
You see, I think part of the problem is, one of the reasons I wrote the book, Find Your Way, I think part of the problem is that we're all very frustrated with politics and politicians. And so we keep trying to ask ourselves the question you just asked: how do we change them? And my message in this book, and my message to all the organizations that I work with, is forget them. Let's change ourselves.
Yes.
If you're tired of waiting for someone else to solve the problem in your community, then roll up your sleeves, collaborate with others, lead, and solve the problem in your community. None of us are going to change someone else. What we can do is choose to lead in our own lives, choose to collaborate with others in our own communities, and actually make a positive difference. One of the other things I've learned over and over again is people closest to the problem know best how to solve it, actually. Honestly, a whole bunch of politicians in Washington, D.C. have no idea how to solve the problems. But I go out and do work in communities every single day, and people actually understand the problem that is impacting them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they think they can't do anything about it, but it turns out with the right support, the right training, the right inspiration, the right collaboration, the right catalytic leadership, that they actually do know how to solve the problem. And that's what we ought to be doing more of. Don't point your finger at someone else and tell them to be different. Let's solve the problem right in front of us.
Yeah, again, I think you're so right, because we tug the forelock, we look to the leadership and we say, okay, well, there's a problem, you fix it. But the willingness to roll up our sleeves and actually take that on is what will change leadership in every possible form, because it will demand the collaborative, catalytic leadership that you're talking about that I definitely think we need. When you do this work now with your foundations, you've got the Unlocking Potential Foundation. Tell us a little bit about what that is and how it works, because I know it ties very sweetly into your book, Find Your Way. Tell us about that.
Well, Find Your Way is written to coalesce everything that I've learned about problem solving and leadership in a way that is accessible to anybody. They don't have to have an MBA. They don't even have to be in a business. The Unlocking Potential Foundation takes everything that I know about problem solving and teamwork and collaboration and leadership and why courage and character matter, and it applies it with the great team of folks who work with me to nonprofit organizations in communities across the country. Because it turns out that while a lot of people in corporate America are used to getting a bunch of leadership training, effective or ineffective, however it may be, folks in nonprofit organizations who are dealing with incredibly difficult problems don't always get the same investment in their human potential. And so we do what we call leadership labs. We work with people on the ground. We give them coaching for a period of 6 months afterwards. So whether it's wounded warriors or disabled children or adults through Easter Seals, or whether it's organizations that work with the homeless, organizations who work with immigrant communities, what we're doing is helping people become more effective problem solvers. We're helping people unlock their potential for leadership, whoever they are and wherever they are. Let me just give you a very tiny example of what I mean.
Thank you.
Because it's the most surprising example I can think of to illustrate the points we've just been talking about, that don't look at other people, deal with what you have in your own backyard. I have a podcast as well, and it's called By Example. And in that podcast, I lift up people that I think are actually leading because they're solving problems. Some of them are famous, some of them you've never heard of. Well, I just had an episode. I have not yet put it out there, but I just finished recording an episode with a young man who became concerned about the homeless community in his neighborhood. And he decided that what he was going to do was buy chicken sandwiches and distribute them to the homeless. And while he did that, he was going to talk to the homeless person, give them a hug. And I asked him why he did this. And he said, well, they're people just like us. And I said, well, what do you do with a problem? And he said, you have to face it. Now, the young man I'm talking about just started kindergarten. He's 5 years old.
Whoa, that's
His
awesome.
name is Austin Perrine. And he decided that what you do with a problem is face it. And what he's done, along with his dad, TJ, who's an awesome guy as well, they've raised over $90,000 nationally. And now Austin's ambition is to build a homeless shelter in his community. Okay, a 5-year-old. Yeah, a 5-year-old.
A couple of things from a 5-year-old, huh?
Yeah, but he said, you know what, why? This is my problem. I have allowance money. It was his allowance money. I can help feed these people. I can make them feel loved and valued. I have a problem. I can face it. And that is the beginning of a journey of leadership. You have a problem. Let's figure out how to face it. And Austin figured out there were lots of people whose help he needed, but he was the one who said, I'm going to do something.
That is inspiring. Thank you for sharing that. That's so awesome. I love it when somebody really steps into leadership, but when that somebody happens to be 5, it's like the rest of us is like, wake up.
Yeah, and so we get so confused. Again, if people want to check out Austin Perrine on By Example, go to carlyfiorina.com. But the point is, we get so confused about what leadership is. We get waylaid. We get waylaid by people's expectations. We get waylaid by the corner office beckoning us. We get waylaid by all these things. And in fact, leadership in its purest form is to figure out the problem that you are meant to solve, to have the courage to step out and take the criticism that comes with changing things, to have the character to keep going when the going gets tough, to have the humility and the empathy to collaborate with others because you know you need them and you actually are prepared to hear what they have to say, and to see possibilities, the possibility that things actually can be better. I don't just have to sit around and complain about why it's so bad.
You brought up a bunch of stuff that I'd love to unpack, but the one thing I want to go after is this. You talked about the expectations. And I think that we have all been brought up to have, that we take on the expectations of others. One of my quotes is that we trade our authenticity for approval. And that's a very sad thing. However, when I look at your life, I mean, you raised through the ranks. You started out as a secretary in a law firm, I think, a real estate firm. And
real estate firm, even worse.
And then you went on, and your dad was a federal judge and a law professor. You went to law school for about 20 minutes, and you dropped out of that. Let's start there. I mean, there's got to be an enormous amount of expectation on a federal judge's daughter who goes to law school. Dropping out must have felt pretty like, oh my, I'm on the roller coaster here.
Well, actually, it was the most difficult decision of my young life.
I believe you.
I was a parent pleaser. I wasn't a rebel. I was the middle child who pleased my parents. I always met their expectations. And my dad wanted me to go to law school. My mom thought it was a great idea. I was going. So it was excruciating to quit. And yet, I was so miserable in law school that it forced me to come to grips with what's more important here. Mm-hmm. Pleasing someone else, even my beloved parents, or finding a life that I can live. And I decided I had to find a life that I could live. Now, it got scarier. It was very scary to tell them. They expressed grave disappointment in me. But it got even scarier because I had no plan. No plan.
Right.
I not only had I just dropped out of law school, but my degree was in medieval history and philosophy. I mean, I'm totally unemployable.
Yeah, degree for unemployment.
Yes, exactly. So all I could do was get a job that I could handle. And the job that I could handle was being a receptionist. I wasn't even the main secretary, a receptionist for a 9-person real estate firm. That's what I did. It paid my small little bills. But 6 months into that job, 2 men who worked there came to my desk and said, we've watched you. You could do more. Do you want to know what we do? And I have never forgotten what it feels like when someone takes a chance on you. Yes. I've never forgotten that. And the truth is, everybody needs someone to take a chance on them. Everybody does. And because they took a chance on me, I saw possibilities in myself that I didn't know were there. So what I've also learned is that none of us realize our true potential unless we go through something challenging and difficult. You know that. Mm-hmm. But I think sometimes people expect the ride to be smooth. If you're going to tap what you're really made of, you got to really be challenged. And that's hard.
I think it's extraordinarily hard. And I think we're all looking for the easy way. But I know after all these years in the work that I've done, that I've not met a leader who's not been through it, to use a term. And when I look at your story, there's a lot in there. I mean, aside from turning your back on law and dad's expectations, mom's expectations, you ran for Senate in California. You didn't get it. You ran in the presidential race. And whether I agreed with your politics or not is actually irrelevant to me. What's relevant is the way you were treated. I think it was appalling because I just don't think that anybody should be treated like that based on visage, on the image. It's ridiculous. And then on top of that, let's also remember, if it's okay for us to go there, in 1990, I fell off a mountain, got smashed to pieces. My life was changed dramatically because I actually died 5 times. In 2009, I believe it was, you were diagnosed with breast cancer. So you've had, bam, you've been hit, you've fallen off your mountain several times. Can you walk us through, because it's a nice idea that, that happened, then I changed my mind. But that's not the truth. That's not the process. There's more to it. Walk us through a little bit of that, Kelly, because I want people to understand you, the woman, the human being, not just the CEO, not just a politician, not just the person who runs foundations, but you. Tell us a little bit about what that experience is of being knocked down have been like, and how you have gone internal around that.
One of the things that I would have to say is I have learned courage through practice. Sometimes people have described me as fearless. It's not true. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's knowing how to get over it. And I spent so much of my life being afraid of something, being afraid of disappointing my parents, being afraid of failing. My very first customer meeting was held in a strip club because that's where the men had lunch. And they thought it would be an easy way to get rid of me, to intimidate me, to make sure I couldn't do my job. I mean, I could tell you 1,000 stories of situations in which I was afraid and had to decide, am I going to get over this and get on with it or not? I start there because I think courage is the most fundamental quality of leadership. No matter what we try and do, if we're changing the order of things for the better, we're going to get criticized. We're going to get treated badly. It's just part of it. And so I actually feel, as I know you do in reading something about you, I feel very fortunate to have had to learn courage. I was always different. And so I, got criticized about a lot of things. When I became a CEO for the first time, the day I was announced as the new CEO of Hewlett-Packard, I was the first woman, the first outsider, the first non-engineer. I didn't come from Silicon Valley. I didn't come from the computer industry. And the conversation around me was what kind of suit I was wearing. There was a persistent rumor that I built a pink marble bathroom, that I traveled with a hair and makeup artist. I mean, the stuff that was around me was just unbelievably strange. But by the time I got there, I had been through it enough. I'd learned how to be brave. I'd learned how to ignore the criticism. In 2009, you are right. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. A year later, our daughter died of addiction. So I understand, I bring those two things up because, and you do this, you understand this as well. There are existential fears. Yeah. I am going to die. Someone I love is going to die. Those existential fears call upon our courage. But there are also other kinds of fears that can be equally debilitating. I'm going to look stupid. People are going to make fun of me. I'm going to fail. I will disappoint people's expectations. What are people saying about me at the water cooler? And what I've seen in my life is people are as flattened by those non-existential fears. Absolutely. As sometimes people are by truly existential fears. Yeah. And the other thing I've learned is that everybody's afraid of something. And so until and unless we can get over our fear and find courage, we will never fulfill our potential. That is just part of the human condition.
So how do you do that?
You have to be challenged. Sometimes life throws it at you, but how I've gotten over my fears is I go through a little exercise. And this is in the book. The first thing I do after freaking out about whatever it is.
But I think stop for a moment, because I think this is really important. That, I want everybody to get.
Yeah, we all freak out.
You freak out. Right?
We all freak out. You have that moment. I don't know when it happens. Maybe it's back to law school. For me, I freaked out standing in the shower. standing in the shower going, oh my God, I think I'm going to quit. Okay, you have your freak out. Oh my God, I have to go into a strip club. Oh my God, they're asking me about my designer suit. Oh my God, I might die. Oh my God, the next president of the United States is saying he doesn't like my face on Twitter. Whatever it is, you have this moment of freak out. And then the exercise that I teach, that I've gone through my whole life, is name your fear.
Right.
Name it. Say it out loud. Triple credit if you write it down. What am I afraid of?
Yes.
What am I afraid of? I'm afraid my parents won't love me. I'm afraid I'm going to look stupid in my suit and my little bow tie and my briefcase in a strip club. Whatever it is, name your fear. And then once you name it, it already has lost some of its power. When you can say it, the second you can say it, it's not quite as powerful anymore. And then the next step is to say, okay, let me think through, what is the worst thing that can happen? What's the worst thing that can happen here? Deal with it, understand it, prepare for it. The worst thing that can happen is I'll die. The worst thing that can happen is my daughter will die. And then you start to prepare for, how am I going to handle that?
Yes.
And then you get to, what's the best thing that can happen?
Mm-hmm.
And in my experience, if you've taken the time, and again, I have a lot of practice with fear. If you've taken the time to name your fear, if you've taken the time to really think through, what's the worst thing that can happen? And with those two steps, the horror that you're contemplating loses ever more of its power.
Mm-hmm.
You actually never can predict the best thing that's going to happen. It turns out to be far better than you thought it would be. Yeah. Some blessing will come along, maybe multiple blessings.
Mm-hmm. So you've talked about these big existential moments in life, and and we've had those. But what about, there's just the truth of the matter is, as you said, we all have those freak out moments, but we also have those moments where you wake up and you go, oh, I just don't want to get up. I want to pull the blankets over my head. I've had enough. When I watched what was going on in 2016 and, saw you taking those hits, there must have been mornings where you wanted to just pull the blankets over your head and go, I don't want to go out.
Actually, there weren't. There really weren't. And maybe it's because, first of all, again, I've learned the critics are always the loudest. The critics are always the loudest. You saw me taking blows. What I saw day after day after day was people who lifted me up and who told me I was lifting them up. I was doing something that I thought was making an impact. So if you're going to lead, if you're going to have an impact, if you're going to change the order of things for the better, at a certain point, you have to start ignoring all the naysayers and all the critics. So there was never a moment when I wanted to quit. If I had felt that way, I would have quit. I ended up quitting when it was clear I couldn't win. And while I always knew it was a long shot, there's no point in doing something when there literally is no way to achieve the goal. So if people are pulling the covers up over their head and saying, oh my God, I don't want to do this anymore, that's a little bit like me in law school. Think about why. Mm-hmm. If you don't want to be doing what you're doing, then maybe you need to be doing something else.
Yeah, but I also think what I was suggesting is I think there are days that are not true. What I mean by that is there's a day it's like, oh, it just feels that way, but there's something bigger. And so I can get out of bed. And that's what I was asking really for you is like, on the days where you feel like that, where you feel like, what is it that pulls you out of bed? What is it that gets you out into the world as Carly Fiorina?
See, I guess I don't agree with your premise. If I may be frank, I think
absolutely.
Look, we all have days when we're depressed, or days when we feel, less motivated than others. But the point I'm trying to make is, if it's really a question of, oh my God, I can't do this anymore, then there is no satisfaction in what you're doing.
No.
And then you need to be doing something else. That's how I felt in law school. There was no satisfaction, no joy, and therefore ultimately no purpose in what I was doing. So I stopped doing it.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with anything you just said. I actually fully agree with it. I was just talking about on the day. So when you just feel that way on a day, what, is there a motivating factor for you? Is there a purpose for you that gets you out of bed? I know that if I have a day where I'm feeling a bit down, I return to my personal purpose. And it's like, okay, get up, because that's more important than the way I feel today, because I know how I feel is semi-permanent, but I know my truth is always permanent. That's my core of what I was referring to, rather than I don't believe there's such a thing as quitting in the context of the way that most people see it. I think that smart people know when to walk away from something that is actually not honoring who they are. Not, you talk about following your own soul, and I talk about that too. So, you're talking about doing stuff that, walking away from things that don't honor your soul, or are not just, when we evaluate it, it's not going to work. So I get totally what you're saying about that moment in the shower. Was that moment of going, this is not my path. And I know that that's all of what this book is about finding what is that path for you and how to stay on it, right?
Yes, and I guess the other point, I fully agree with everything you just said. And I guess the other point I'm trying to make is that, and I make it in the book, I don't think that life is about a destination. I don't think life is about, oh my gosh, I'm going to be miserable if I don't win the presidency, or I'm going to be miserable if I don't get this exact corner office job. I think life is about a path of how we behave, a path of the problems we choose to tackle, a path of courage and character and collaboration with others and making an impact. And so I guess I measure my days in terms of, am I doing things that lift me up? Am I having a positive impact and making a positive contribution? Am I being true to myself? And if I can answer those three questions in the affirmative, then it is a day worth living.
Absolutely. Fully agree with that. So tell us, Kelly, with everything that's going on for you and all the movements forward, what is it that you find yourself presently most curious about?
Most curious about? Well, one of the things that gets me going in the morning, just to segue from your earlier question, is there is a certain look. I think the highest calling of a leader is to unlock potential in others. It is why I've never forgotten how it felt when somebody saw potential in me. The highest calling of a leader is to unlock potential in others, and leaders solve problems. So that is fuel for me. There's a certain look. When people do more than they think they're capable of doing, when someone's potential is unlocked, there is a look that people get. When people are inspired,
yes,
there's a look people get in their eyes. It is the same look the world over. And it doesn't matter if you're a young child or you're an old man or a woman, it doesn't matter. It's the same look. And for me, that look is fuel. It's fuel. So what am I curious about? What I'm curious about is you talked about fitting in. I worry, maybe it's more accurate to say I worry about it. I know that people have so much innate potential and power. I worry, I'm curious, in an age where we are capable of so much, how we've gotten to this place where so many people feel like they are capable of so little. And they're spending so much energy for approval and fitting in. I mean, my gosh, the curating the photos on Instagram and all these crazy things we do on social media, and all around them are opportunities to make a difference. So I'm curious about that, and I'm concerned about that.
It's a fascinating polarity in that we live in a time where there is the greatest opportunity for self-expression we've ever known.
And for leadership and for impact.
Absolutely, for leadership and impact and self-expression of something magnificent within us, what I call deep greatness. And at the same time, we are at a catastrophic moment of loneliness. We see that is epidemic. Loneliness is epidemic.
And tribalism together. Terrible.
Right,
What a
and
terrible
so
combination.
right, so you got this weird polarity, which is I'm a member of this tribe no matter what, and it's almost jingoistic in its content of, okay, this is my tribe no matter what, and at the same time, I'm so alone. That's why I'm in this stupid tribe, as opposed to standing out and standing alone, and that pain.
And finding community in the process.
Exactly, and that's it. So, you know, I am a great believer in that, in the you are unique in your expression, but you need to bring others into that so they can find their uniqueness and step into that greatness that we can all leverage into the world and make a better place. But how do we get across that barrier of that tribalness? That's fascinating for me, because I look at some of the things that I see Republicans doing and I go, I really like that. And I look at some of the things Democrats are saying and I really like that. And it doesn't matter, because you're in the D camp and you're in the R camp and we are never going to talk to each other. And it's almost a curse.
But you know what? That goes on in lots of different spheres.
Absolutely.
It's not just politics. And I guess back to the conversation we had a couple minutes ago. You see, I think we get over both our loneliness and our tribalism when we sit down and solve the problem in front of us. So when people will talk to me and say, well, I can't do this and they're doing that, and how do I bring out the potential? I said, find a problem. Mm-hmm. Find a problem and solve it. Not a theoretical problem, not somebody else's problem, not some big, huge problem. The problem that's right in front of you. There are problems that each of us are meant to solve. That's why I told the story of Austin Perrine.
Yeah.
Okay. Austin Perrine found 3 homeless guys and said, you know what? I'm not waiting for someone else. I'm going to go feed them a chicken sandwich. Was it a systemic solution? No. But did those people feel fundamentally different after they had been touched by Austin Perrine? You bet.
Yeah.
You bet. So the point is, what I tell people is, don't wait for someone else. Don't bitch about someone else. Don't decry the state of the world. Find the problem that you are meant to solve, and find someone else who's also impacted by that problem. And guaranteed, both of you will have some good ideas about how to solve it, and collaborate and solve it, and make progress.
For me, that's the thing that stands out about what you're talking about here, is find the problem and let's come together to fix the problem. And tribal thinking is never going to do that, because we might agree there's a problem, but we're never going to come together. And I love what you're saying about this. Let's push that away and say, okay, how can I step in? This is my problem in my community.
That's right. This is my problem to solve.
Is anybody else going to put their hand up and say they want to join in? You do? Fantastic. Let's do something about this.
Yeah.
And it's pragmatic, but it's also deeply soulful and connected and important for each of us to do.
Well, it's what I learned. So I started in this big company. My first meeting's in a strip club. My resume reads medieval history and philosophy, law school dropout secretary. I am not destined for success, okay? But everywhere I looked, I saw problems. And I saw people bitching about the problems, gossiping about the problems, but nobody was doing anything about the problems. And so what I did was start talking to people. I tell stories about this, my book. Tell me about a problem you have, okay? Now tell me about an idea you have to solve the problem. And then we go tackle it. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be world hunger. There are problems we are meant to solve. They're right in front of us.
Yeah. I love it. It's simple and it's powerful. Carly, this has been wonderful. Are you ready for the lightning round?
Uh-oh, the lightning round. Well, you can make it a lightning round. My answers may not be lightning, but I get the point.
We'll go with the lightning round. What makes you cry, as in sad tears?
Oh, usually, honestly, I cry when I see or I hear the best of humanity. So A beautiful piece of music will make me cry. A beautiful display of empathy or leadership will make me cry. I don't usually cry. I do cry sometimes at very tragic things, but mostly I cry when I am touched by the best of the human spirit.
Fantastic. What makes you cry laughing?
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's so many things, but you know, on the flip side, honestly, people can be so ridiculous sometimes that my latest favorite example, I had never heard of this, so I'll show you how out of it I am. But have you ever heard of mukbanging? Okay, well, mukbang, it sounds vaguely obscene, maybe it is, but mukbanging comes from Korea, but it is the process of eating a whole bunch of food really, really fast and filming yourself while you do it and putting it up on YouTube, okay? And there are people who become millionaires mukbanging. Well, this is such a big thing now that one of the major hotels here in Washington, D.C., called the W Hotel, has a mukbanging room service menu for $225 a night. You can order a mukbang menu and they will give you a stand for your phone and you can videotape yourself eating this and putting it up on YouTube. That makes me laugh out loud.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, wow. Exactly. That is crazy. That makes me laugh.
Wow, that is insane. Okay, I'm not going to go to that one because that one could break. We could spend an hour just talking about
yes,
that
just how crazy that is.
Absolutely.
I mean, the beauty of humanity makes me cry, and the foibles and the foolishness sometimes of people make me laugh.
Wow. In a parallel universe, who are you? What do you do?
Oh, I have no idea. Honestly, I have no idea. I only know one life. I only know one set of choices I've made. I spend no time thinking about what if, should have, could have, would have.
This is not what if. This is a playful. So, because your mom was an artist, your dad was a lawyer. I mean, you know, you maybe you'd.
I guess a musician. I guess a musician. Yeah, I guess.
Particular.
But I spend no time thinking about it. That's why I catch it.
You don't have to.
Maybe a singer.
Yeah. Very cool. Any particular kind of singing?
No, gosh, you've taken it way past my, thinking about it.
That's the idea entirely. In mine, somebody asked, the question came out of, we were at working with a corporate team, and the CEO just looked at me one day and said, in a parallel universe, what would you be? And I went, that's a good thought. I don't think about anything else. I love what I do. And my wife just looks, my wife is actually my business partner and she's a co-facilitator. And she goes, who are you kidding? And I go, what? She goes, you'd be a gardener. And I went,
interesting.
That's true. I would, because I love
well, there you go. Okay.
I love, and I don't think about it, but when I'm there, that's the only thing that exists. So it's very cool. It's an interesting thought. Thank you, Carly.
You're welcome.
As we finish, one of the things I like to always finish with is to ask my guests to share one piece of very practical advice. I think you've probably already done it, but one piece of very practical advice that you'd like for our listeners, our viewers, to go away and put into action, preferably in the next 24 hours, so that they can actually take in what it is that you've been sharing with us.
Well, two.
Okay, good.
Solve. Don't worry about what other people say about you. Don't let it get under your skin. Worry about the choices you make every day. The rest will fall into place.
Fantastic. Kelly, it's been a real pleasure. I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us today. It was wonderful. And
thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Would you please share with our audience where they can find out more about you and all the wonderful resources that you have to offer?
Yes, please go to carlyfiorina.com. If you have an organization that you think might benefit from our work, you can also find out where to get the book there, or the podcast, or all the myriad of other programs we offer. carlyfiorina.com.
Thank you so much. And you can hang out with other conscious leaders and chat about this episode or any past episodes by simply going to Facebook or LinkedIn into our groups there, and you can chat about these shows. And to find out how you can hire me, Dow Barron, as a speaker or strategist for your organization, you can simply go to fullmontyleadership.com/consulting or fullmontyleadership.com dow.com/speaking. Please be aware that the research consistently shows that even the fastest growing companies face exactly the same challenges you do. They're spending time, money, energy, and effort attracting, training, and developing top talent, but also having the same challenge of them leaving before they get their ROI. If that's the challenge you're facing, then come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside of your organization by tapping into purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, because you can't outsource authenticity. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everyone you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about the problem you came here to solve. And stay curious about the courage you can find to solve it. The world needs you to be in your greatest, so find your way. I'm Dow Barron, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.